Hello everyone, my name is Ahmad Harisukwan bin Ismail and I will start our presentation that is titled as the Apple Innovation Machine Store. So for introduction, Apple is a one of the global tech leader because Apple transformed consumer culture by masterfully blending design, software and hardware paradigms. The second is the innovation contradiction. While modern researchers advocate for open innovation, shared intellectual property and collaboration, Apple rigorously adheres to a highly secretive closed innovation model. The third one is core operational pillars. Apple have a centralized research and development R&D department with strict structural controls and a tightly guarded walled garden product ecosystem. Number 4 is asset efficient outsourcing. Apple scales up global production aggressively through outsourcing to avoid heavy capital expenditure on manufacturing factories. Number 5 is the competition risk. Outsources core components to Samsung. Apple faces market rival. This paradoxically grants its biggest competitor for the scale, capital, and technical blueprints needed to rapidly advance its own competing smartphone lines.
This infographic explains why Apple's return on investment has fallen over time. The first reason is intense competition. Companies like Samsung produce cheaper and highly competitive smartphones, which reduce Apple's profit margins. The second reason is that Apple's recent innovations are more incremental and less disruptive. New iPhones and iPads improve existing products, but they do not create entirely new market like the original iPhone or iPod did. The third reason is higher investment and operating costs. Apple spent heavily on cloud services, retail store, and supply chain management, which increases expenses. The fourth reason is rising customer service demand. As more people use Apple devices, Apple Store require more staff and resources to provide technical support. Finally, outsourcing has created competitors. Samsung was once one of Apple major supplier, but after learning from Apple's technology and processes, it became one of the Apple's strongest competitor. Together, this factor has reduced Apple investment.
Okay, now we're moving to the question number 2, which is Steve Jobs' impact on Apple is without question. Surely a company of over 100,000 employees is not reliant on one person. How did his death affect Apple? Following up from this, market experts say his death slowed down Apple radical innovation. Instead of making groundbreaking new product, Apple shifted to incremental innovation, which means just sprucing up or making small updates to existing product. In reality, Apple's biggest loss was Jobs' rare ability to say no to bad idea. For example, he famously stopped early tablet project to focus 100% on the iPhone. Without his vision, rival like Samsung not taking away Apple profit margin. However, from an internal operational view, the design engine did not stop. According to Jonathan Ive, the core design team is very stable. This is because the same team has worked together for over 50 years using shared group learning culture. Therefore, will the strategy vision change without Jobs? The internal execution remain highly consistent.
Now, this slide looks at Apple's future outlook. First, Apple still has many strengths. The company has a strong culture of innovation, a powerful ecosystem, loyal customer, and strong financial resources. Products such as the iPhone, Apple Watch, iPad, and iCloud work together smoothly, encouraging customers to stay within the Apple ecosystem. However, Apple also faces several risks and challenges. Competition from Samsung and other technology companies is becoming more intense. Some critics also believe Apple is focusing too much on improving existing products rather than creating revolutionary innovation. In addition, smartphone markets are becoming saturated. Despite these risks, the overall outlook remains positive. Growth may have become slower, but a sharp decline is unlikely because Apple still has a strong brand reputation, customer loyalty, and innovation capabilities.
We're moving to the question number 4, which is explain how Jonathan Ive may be responsible for much Apple past success and future version. Uh, First of all, Jonathan Ive literally saved Apple from the bankrupt in past year. In 1997, he designed the famous, which is candy color iMac computer, which made Apple commercially successful again. In addition, he was the main brain behind the look and feel the iPod, iPhone, and iPad. Next, for Apple feature version, Jonathan Ive power became obsolete after his promotion in 2000 2012. He was given full control over both hardware and software design under the Human Interface Department. Through this unified power, he ensured that the user experience remained simple, clean, and intuitive. Alongside creating the Apple was to dominate wearable tests, Jonathan Ive designed a successful turning Apple from a tech company into a luxury lifestyle brand. By by key the by controlling both of physical design and the digital software interface, Jonathan Ive hold the key to keep Apple premium and wealthy for the future.
My name is Muhammad Amirul Afiq and I will presenting about this slide. Apple is known for innovation, but is mainly use closed innovation model. This means Apple keeps full control of its idea, design, and product. There are three main reasons for this. First is extreme secrecy and control. Apple keeps its product information highly secret, and employee can only access information on a need-to-know basis. The company also gives strict punishment for leaks, which is opposite to open innovation that encourage sharing idea and transparency. Second is in-house design and vision. Apple design all of its product internally and control the product design, user experience, and ecosystem. Most innovation comes from Apple on Steam, which ensure every product follow Apple's vision and standard. Last is custom design. Apple use custom-made design instead of standard external design. Suppliers must follow Apple exact specification and only manufacture product, while Apple does not accept outside creative idea in its innovation process. Did Apple mismanage its outsourcing? Apple may have faced outsourcing risk because it outsourced key component to Samsung, which allow Samsung to gain technology knowledge and manufacturing experience. This eventually helped Samsung become Apple direct smartphone competitor, meaning Apple indirectly strengthened its bigger rival. In addition, Apple high profit margin become harder to maintain as Samsung increased competition, reducing Apple market advantage and causing its share price earning ratio to decline between 2012 and 2014. This showed that outsourcing increased Apple exposure to competitive pressure. However, Apple also managed outsourcing effectively through strong supply chain management under Tim Cook, who reduced suppliers from 100 to only 24. This improved efficiency, lower costs, enabled large-scale iPhone production, and helped Apple avoid expensive factory investment. Furthermore, by outsourcing manufacturing to partners like Foxconn and Samsung, Apple was able to focus on high-value activities such as design, innovation, ecosystem development, and marketing. This strategy helped Apple generate $42 billion in revenue in 2012 and maximize profitability and long-term growth.
Now, this slide discusses the debate about whether Apple is a disruptive innovator or simply copying others. On one hand, Apple is clearly a disruptive innovator. Products such as the iPod, iPhone, and iPad transform industries and change consumer behavior. Apple also set new standard for design, simplicity, and user experience. Apple's strength is not always inventing new technology first, but improving existing technology through better design, usability, and ecosystem integration. Apple makes complex technology simple and attractive for consumer. On the other hand, Apple is often accused of copying others because many of its products were not the first of their kind. The iPod was not the first music player, the iPhone was not the first smartphone, and the iPad was not the first tablet. Critics argue that Apple refines existing ideas rather than inventing completely a new ones. Therefore, Apple can be seen as both a disruptive innovator and a company that improves upon existing technologies.
So for the ecosystem strategy, Apple can do lifecycle congruence. That means that moving value capture from a rational economy of hardware specs to an emotional economy of brand resonance. The first one is identity expression. Products act as tool for self-actualization and social distinction. Platform lock-in, seamless integration creates high switching costs, as cited by Mao et al. 2020, and organic advocacy, turning consumers into active marketers and passionate advocates. For the retail paradox, structural evolution, Apple must reorient its physical footprint from transactional hubs back to spaces of exclusive emotional resonance. It is brand sanctuaries, transaction-free zones for sensory immersion and communal learning, and support micro-hubs, localized kiosks for logistical utility and technical repairs.
This infographic explains why Apple's return on investment has fallen over time. The first reason is intense competition. Companies like Samsung produce cheaper and highly competitive smartphones, which reduce Apple's profit margins. The second reason is that Apple's recent innovations are more incremental and less disruptive. New iPhones and iPads improve existing products, but they do not create entirely new market like the original iPhone or iPod did. The third reason is higher investment and operating costs. Apple spent heavily on cloud services, retail store, and supply chain management, which increases expenses. The fourth reason is rising customer service demand. As more people use Apple devices, Apple Store require more staff and resources to provide technical support. Finally, outsourcing has created competitors. Samsung was once one of Apple major supplier, but after learning from Apple's technology and processes, it became one of the Apple's strongest competitor. Together, this factor has reduced Apple investment return